We're having a conversation around issues surrounding the transgender persons in Kenya. That's what we'll be talking about this hour. And like I said, many people in the room this morning, but it is all good. And as we get into that conversation, Colbert Ojiambo is here with us. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And Adrian Kibe is also here. He's a program assistant with the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and as well as Mrima, who is a communications lead at Jinsiangu-Kenya. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, good to have you all here today. And as we get into conversations this hour, let us welcome you properly. You know, all hot seats. It's a hot issue. It's a big topic. Many things said and unsaid. So let's get into it and get into it properly with the time that we have, shall we? Right. But before we do that, let's welcome you. You know how people welcome you with a cup of tea? We welcome you with a basket of proverbs. And CT is carrying the basket this morning.
Kokende li boso eza kokoma te. Now, what that is supposed to mean, according to this, if we translate it into English, is to go ahead doesn't mean you have arrived.
Okay, let's do a round robin, basically. And then you can tell us what it means to each of you. We can start with you, Adrian. What does that mean to you when you hear that? How does that resonate with you?
That it's all part of the journey. And yeah, that's all part of the journey. That there's no arriving. It's a continuous process. And I think about it in terms of life. Yeah, you might achieve one thing, but that doesn't mean that's the end. There's more.
Indeed. Okay. Next, Colbert, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I may maybe agree with Adrian to that extent that, arriving and being ahead are two different things. Okay? So arriving probably may be speaking about achieving. And being ahead does not necessarily mean that you have achieved. Okay. Being ahead means there's somebody behind you.
It's like if you're number one in class 1. You know, there's up to...
It's number 1 in class 2.
And then there's secondary school.
Right.
And then there's post-secondary school. Yeah. So being
you are ahead of something.
Yes. What do you think?
What do you think, Ava? Am I saying that right, Ava?
I'll be doing a disservice if I take a...
Please do a disservice, by all means. We welcome you to do the disservice,
no,
please.
Because honestly, I mean, I do agree with exactly what Ednah has actually said. Literally getting ahead in life, if you look at it like from that angle, there's nothing else I can add to it, to be honest.
Actually, to be honest, you could have said a lot more.
If we're being honest.
Yes, but if that's what you want to say, the thing about an interpretation of a proverb is you cannot be wrong.
Okay, yes.
Perhaps you should have led with that.
Yes, because we're asking your opinion. Now, your opinion can't be wrong. It's your opinion.
Is my opinion.
Yes. You see, the diversity of interpretations is necessary because it tells you just how diverse our thinking and interpretation of issues are. And that's what we want to hear. We want to hear that diversity.
Indeed.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, speaking of diversity, it's one of the issues around the topic that we're discussing this morning, and issues surrounding transgender persons in Kenya. And it's an open and an honest conversation about some of those issues. But let's start off from the very beginning with some definitions in the space that we're going to be discussing this today. Let's start off with you, Ava. Transgender. Who? What is transgender?
Transgender in the basic terms is, I'll explain like we're 5.
Let's do it.
Literally being born in the wrong body. From the sex you're assigned at birth to the gender identity you come to realize yourself to be. You're literally at crossroads with the way your body is read by society. Okay.
We're gonna need you to explain that now that like we're 5 because you've used some words that are interesting. You've talked about assigned, you've talked about being in the wrong body, you've talked about a couple of other things. What exactly are we saying here? What is a transgender? Who is a transgender person?
A transgender person is you, it's me, it's someone else, right? As a human being, at the basis of it. with a very complex layer of the essence of who you are as a person. Basically, how you see yourself, who you see yourself as in terms of gender, right? Based on also how society reads gender roles, right? And so for a transgender person, you're literally either born a boy or you're either born a girl, but the gender you feel yourself to be does not really correspond with the common understanding that, boys are born, with this type of genitalia. You're going to grow up and, become men in the future, for example. But then for transgender persons, it's literally quite the opposite, right? You find that the gender the person feels that they are, right, they come to realize themselves as they are, as they grow up, is totally different from the expectations of what society expects the kind of sex you're born as to manifest in terms of the gender later in life. So you find that there's that distinction, and that's what we call, that's who transgender people are.
Okay, so you were born male or female?
Personally, right? I was born male, for example.
Were born male or female, but you do not feel male if you were born male, or you do not feel female if you were born female, and you feel the urge to then become what you feel. Is this what we're saying?
Literally. But then there needs to be a very big distinction between sex and gender. We tend to conflate the two a lot. And so if we talk about, male and female, we're talking about the biological anatomy, right? When we talk about gender, we're talking about, we'd say probably an abstract concept of how we view ourselves as people. For example, Colbert being born male, right? Colbert identifies as male at this point in time. All through his life, for example, he has not had any what we call incongruence, right, in terms of the way they feel, the way he feels rather. So basically, being born in a body that is of one sex, but then your gender is totally completely different. Yeah.
Colbert, how does somebody identify with gender? How do I identify as male or identify as female? Because for the longest time, it's who you are. You don't even have to think about identifying. You're a human being, you're a human being. You are a female, you are a female. You just go. If you're a male, you're a male. And we're having this discussion because if we're going to say we're going to open up ourselves to the realms of understanding, then we must understand the intricacies, because that's what we're doing here in terms of issues, right? How do you identify as opposed to just being?
I think picking up from what Ava has said, there are two things here. There is the biological component of who you are, and there is the social component of you. When we are seated in this room, we are not displaying our biological components. What are we seeing when we are looking at each other? We are seeing the social component. I'm seeing how you are dressed. I'm seeing the hair you have plaited. I'm seeing, the dressing, the shirt you are wearing. I have not gone beyond there to see your biological component.
Actually, we do see the biological component. You have a beard. We don't associate beards with women. You have a mustache. We don't associate mustaches with women. You have a deep voice. We don't associate deep voices with women.
That is exactly what we are talking about. Then, Muga, if a woman starts talking in a deep voice, does she become a man?
No, she doesn't. But believe me, when you first come across a woman who has a deep voice,
the impression is that...
No, it's confusing.
Yes.
You know she's female,
yes,
but the deep voice... I say this because as you were speaking, I remember a girl I was with in primary school who had a deep voice.
Yes.
And it was the source of jokes that were poked at this poor girl for the longest time.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Some even nicknamed her the lion.
Yes.
Simply because of the deep voice that she had.
Yes.
So, you see, as we grow and as we are brought up, the identification factor is something that we are socialized into understanding.
Yes.
It's just socializing.
Yes.
And once we understand that, to change and consider that there may be an alternative. Now that's the difficulty of the journey.
And that's where now gender comes in.
Yes.
How we have been socialized to see things. You have been socialized to believe that a person with a deep voice must be a man.
Accompanied by a beard, of course.
You have been socialized to see that a person with beards must be a man.
Yes.
Right.
You have been socialized to see that a person dressed in trousers and suits like me must be a man. Okay? And that is exactly what we are saying, that there is a conflict with trans people between what they identified at birth. You see, at birth you don't have beards, my brother.
You don't.
At beards you don't have deep voice.
I agree with
At beards you don't even have clothes.
Actually, I was avoiding the distinctive identifiers, but since you brought it up, let me say it. At birth I had a penis, okay? And I've continued to have one.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I have breasts,
Yes.
but they don't grow beyond the point where they're at. Even when I bodybuild,
Yes.
they just jet out just a little bit. Now, these are the identifiers, again, that we then have. So let me ask the question. If I have a penis and I say I am female, how does that work out?
The identifier that you're talking about at birth is just one.
Okay.
Have you at birth identified the chromosomes of that person? Have you looked at the gonads of that person?
Now you
Have
see-
you looked at the hormones of that person at birth?
Now, you see, when you not start getting biological,
Yes.
you confuse me completely.
Yes.
You know why? When do you come across even the word chromosome? At what point in your life?
Okay.
When you're in secondary school.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
And even I studied biology. I still don't understand chromosomes very well. I know there's X and Y.
Yes.
But beyond that, the rest is fuzzy. The point I'm trying to make it is that the existence of individuals who are transgender
Yes.
is a simple reality.
Yes.
But the explanation of it
Yes.
runs against the winds of what we've been socialized to understand.
You are right.
Yes.
You are right.
That is the
You're
point
right.
I'm trying to make.
You are extremely right on that.
Yes.
Adrian, where do you and how did these, and I think this now comes out when we're talking about the issues surrounding this matter, and there are many tags that have been applied, controversial, against morals and values, all sorts of things. Now, what are the elements of socialization that have been with us for so long that we know that we identify, and this is because the majority of people today identify male and female with certain characteristics and behaviors. That's why in the event that something poses as different and you react in your head, it is because it goes against what you have been used to. Am I right? Okay. What then are the elements of this socialization that we are saying we've been socialized to think this way or behave this way, and perhaps they have changed over time for certain people?
Right. Okay. So I will answer your question, but first I'd like us to understand something. There's an issue. There's a term called gender identity.
Okay.
Everybody has a gender identity. You have one. I have one. You have one. And gender identity is not learned. Okay. So in as much as we're going to talk about socialization, we also have to understand that there's an aspect of gender identity that is innate. No one teaches you that. Okay. And there's research on this as well. Now, what transgender persons go through is a difference between their gender identity, their mimi ni nani, and their sex. Okay? So, for example, as Eva has put out, you are born, okay? The identifier is your genitals, right? So your mom is told you've given birth to a baby boy. But because gender identity is innate and it is personal, okay? You grow up and you find that it is a totally different story. So, for example, my case, I was born female, okay? And I was brought up as a girl, okay? But gender identity, like I've said, it is innate. So what happened? As I was growing up, I started realizing that I was more predisposed towards the guy's side. I liked playing sports as the boys did. I liked the roughness. Yeah? I found myself in line with the kind of dressing that they had. That is when I realized that there was an issue. Okay? Now, puberty started, right? And as we've said, sex is the biological makeup. The biology it stays, right? So there's hormones there that are involved. There's the chromosomes that you don't want us talking so much about. But yes.
I was taught about it, but I still don't. I'm still fuzzy about it.
Can I tell you something?
Please.
Do you know that we are all born and we get a chromosome, that's the chromosome X, from our mother? And you know what that means? That we all of us at some point started as females.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. At what point
All of us started as females because we are getting the X.
At what point did I start as a female?
Everybody.
Oh, so I'm not alone.
Everybody.
Okay.
When you are born, you get the X chromosome from your mother.
Yes.
Okay? And you all start as female. What makes the difference is the chromosome that the father contributes.
Okay.
So your father can give an X. That way, it initiates the body to start producing hormones that are predisposed to the female side, as well as the genitals. If the father contributes the Y, okay, you get a male. You get the hormones produced, testosterone, and the formation of the genitalia.
Yes.
Okay? You understand that? And during that time, studies have shown that at that point, gender identity starts coming up. So for transgender persons, what I like thinking about it is this way. That this is a person whose brain instructed the body to do something and the body did not.
Why?
Because, like I've said for my case, right, my gender identity is man, okay? But my body did not correspond with that. You understand? For one reason or another. And the studies are there, okay? So, what happens to this person as they're growing up? Because you're not stopping what is the sex. So at puberty, you realize that transgender persons have a lot of distress.
So, sorry.
And
so you're not
yes.
stopping what biologically is going to occur.
No, you cannot
can't
stop
that because it is already set.
It's there.
That is what is going to happen.
It's there.
Okay.
Okay. And so transgender persons go through what is called gender dysphoria. And this dysphoria is basically the distress. For example, if today you woke up and you are in a female body, you had breasts, very big breasts, you had hips, you had a vagina, how would you feel? And we joke about this a lot.
Why are you allocating big breasts?
Even small ones then. There's no problem with small ones. But I just want you to understand the kind of distress that you would be in. You joke about it for an hour or two, but then after that it becomes serious. And you'll get very uncomfortable. That is the situation that transgender persons find themselves in. We have a situation of, I like putting it this way, the software not matching with the hardware. And if the software is not matching with the hardware, what do you fix? You fix the hardware.
You know,
and now, that fixing is what we call transitioning. It is the transitioning process and the transitioning journey of transgender persons.
You know, this topic is interesting because it's clear that it's a clear departure from what we are socialized into understanding. Not very long ago, we had an individual, a lovely person in this studio, an intersex person.
Yes.
Now, when you may read about it, it is a very different experience when you actually talk to someone who is intersex and they explain to you and you listen. And the thing that comes to my mind is exactly what you're saying. You wonder, my goodness, what has this person had to go through? Because this is not how they're choosing. That is exactly how they are. Yes. And that is their reality. But it's fighting against what is considered the norm. That's a difficult journey. That is probably exactly very appropriate, isn't it?
Ava, what are some of the issues that then are surrounding this? Because I mean, establishment of what it is, and we're not even going to go into, because it's a whole kettle of, another kettle of fish, what people's thoughts are when it comes to, their feelings and their values and their morals and all of that. Okay. What are the issues that we are dealing with today? And is it in Kenya, for example, such an issue that these issues surrounding transgender then must be discussed or brought to the limelight?
Definitely. There are a lot of issues that need to be discussed. Adrian just highlighted, a couple of them. One is the struggle with your own existence, your own body. And this is a journey that you have to go through by yourself. Because then again, who else understands what you're going through more than yourself? In most families, parents don't get to see what we call the components, that is gender identity. So whatever they do see is behavior, right? And so your problems kind of start from there to begin with. because then again, we are social beings. How, again, as Adrian was saying, you're wired as a person, right, to exist, to be, is not something that people even within your own nuclear family really understand. And so your problems start there in terms of, what are you? Who are you? Your parents, I remember my parents asking me, okay, you're dressing differently today. What's going on? What's this journey you're on? Is it a phase for you that you're dressing differently? What type of behaviors have you picked up probably from elsewhere? And so this problem starts. This problem with families is the debut for every other challenge that you might face in life. Because many trans people are actually homeless from a very young age. So that means they have to...
Why is that? Homeless? Sorry, I have to interject on that. Homeless, why?
Because parents don't want to be associated with...
So they kick them out of home?
Yes, they're kicked out of homes. Mm-hmm. And so most of them have to fend for themselves at a very young age. So that means if you were going to school, that has to stop. If you had any, benefits, a roof over your head, healthcare, all those are things that are actually gone. But then your challenge only gets, a bit more difficult from there. Because then again, Adrian mentioned something about transitioning, living authentically as yourself. So one of the things is, as Adrian was saying, you fix the hardware, which is the body, right? Because the gender identity, that the component that is you as a person, will always want to, be manifest and just be forward. Mm. And so, you're going to have a lot of internal stigma about some of these feelings that you have about, belonging to the wrong body. And so that really spikes up a lot of mental health conditions and issues for you as a person. Because then again, you're homeless. You're also struggling to, come to terms with yourself at a very young age. What are you feeling? What are you going through? How can you address some of these issues? And so you find a lot of people are lost as to what to do with themselves. And so most often, because of these challenges, issues of suicide come up. And so most people I'd either stay alive or, choose not to, be around if I can't be myself. And so this is just one of the challenge that's core to it all.
Ava Mrima is the communications lead at Jinsiangu-Kenya. Adrian Kibe is a program assistant at the Kenya Human Rights Commission and an advocate of the High Court. Colbert Ojiambo is with us this morning. So we're looking at some of those issues surrounding transgender persons in Kenya. Or in whatever space, really. And I think that, just as Siti was saying, sometimes you're met with these issues, and the one most issue is complete misunderstanding of whatever is going on. So because I do not understand it, I am going to be against it because it is an uncomfortable space for me. Would you say that those are one of the issues that you then face, or that anybody in this space then has to grapple with when it comes to understanding all of this?
Yes, definitely. I mean, people fear what they don't know, or what they don't understand. And the first reaction is always offense. But then again, it's a very long journey towards understanding anything, literally. And getting there is quite a process. But when we stop seeing the person as a human being, we've lost sort of our humanity at some point in time, because again, trans people are just human beings living a very human experience with a challenge that nobody else other than them as a community really definitely understand. And so we need more people to actually kind of see that at the end of the day, we are in a human experience as people.
But why should anybody strive or even bother to want to understand what these issues are? Why should anybody want to understand something that goes against what they've been conditioned, socialized, normalized to live with? Why should anybody make an effort to understand this very confusing thing?
I must say, because we live in a society, we don't live on an island. we interact on daily basis. We have trans people within our communities, and so it's only fair that we understand who they are, what challenges they are going through, and this is also to help us in terms of accommodating each other.
Do you know that they've always existed in, let me talk about African society.
Yes.
Transgender people have always existed.
Yes.
And you would find that the acceptance of the transgender community was demonstrated in the roles that they played within the society. And they're very accepted roles, and they're very elevated roles, meaning they could rise up in society and be what everybody else could be.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what we are discussing here, at the end of the conversation, I was saying, the colonial understanding of it, because when they came here, they did come across transgender people, and they did find roles in which the African communities had accepted and had normalized in the way that they could. Now, one of the facets of colonialism was to subjugate and to force people into specific roles that the colonizer determined.
Yes.
See? Now, when that narrative takes place, what it therefore means is that even your understanding of what you've lived with has to change to conform with what they are now prescribing.
You're right.
Okay? Let me give an example of a term, polygamy.
Yes.
The role and the place of polygamy in an African society was actually very clear. And if you talk to people who understood how and why it was practiced, it was not difficult to understand why.
You're right.
Now, if you look at polygamy and the role it played in harmonizing communities, it becomes even clearer why it became even more important. And it wasn't just with Africans. No. Very many communities on this planet understood it. But with the advent of the Christian faith as was understood by the British who brought it, I'm specific, as it was understood by the British who brought it, then forced, among other things, people to understand certain norms that had been accepted in African society as wrong.
Yes.
Okay? So even that little understanding of, okay, why do these people do this as they do it? It was wrong because it didn't conform to the norms that they wanted to inculcate. Okay, now, if you have that mindset, it's a mindset of intolerance.
Yes, you're right.
So now, you tell me when you come across somebody who is different from you, and that is your mindset. Just different. The only thing is, they're different. Otherwise, they're just as human as you are. Your initial reaction is intolerance.
Yes.
And you want them to be as far away as possible from you as possible. And you want to treat them as inhumanly as you possibly can, because in your mind, they are not like you. So if they're not like you, they can't be human. But how do you communicate so that people stop running away and fearing and reacting negatively and accepting and saying, you know something, this person is a brother or a sister to somebody else?
And that's the question of understanding that you asked. I think that's now answers spirit very well.
Yes.
We have to understand this person to realize that, oh, it's just like you and me. Okay? There is no difference. So that stigmatization, that fear, that intolerance then has to pave way for acceptance.
Okay. Also understanding what goes on in the mind, because from what Ava and Adrian have said, that there's a mind over matter issue here. That it was not what you saw, it is how you felt, right? So what did you feel? I'd really like to know. So when we're saying growing up, I mean, obviously you can't tell me what happened before you were 1, 2, before you were 3 years old. Forget it. Because if you say when I was 2.5, this is how I felt, I will tell you you're lying, because you can't really remember, especially something as complex as this, right? Yeah. But when you were growing up, from an infant, when you could have those memories of being a child playing, etc., because we're going to remember those things, can't we? What did you feel that would tell you, yes, because like you said, you were born female. Biologically, you were a girl.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What did you feel that would then make you, in your head, think that you were different?
Okay. Right. So, first of all, I think the earliest memory I have is when I was, I think, 5 or 6. And it was the first time we were going to the coast. And I got heat rashes. I remember my mom said, "Uko Mombasa sasa, there's no need for all these clothes." And so I remember the thrill of not wearing a shirt, of being in shorts the whole day and just basking in the sun. It was the best, the best feeling in the world. So that itself was one of the things. The other thing I do recall is now during puberty, when the changes started. And one of the things that I struggled with was the development of my chest. As he's put it, his chest can only grow to a certain level. Wow. So when that changed, I became very uncomfortable. That distress, that discomfort, I know it very well. And for you as a person who's listening, because there's a high chance that you're not trans, the one way to think about it is what I said. If today you are put in a body that's not yours, how would you feel? You'd be very uncomfortable. You'd get stressed and depressed. And that is exactly what I felt. Now, it's important to understand that those feelings that I had, that is what we are calling gender dysphoria. Okay? But the gender identity itself, just something saying to me, you are this is not where you belong. So
it's not telling you what you are, but it's telling you that you shouldn't be here. Because then one would ask, how would you know that this identity would be able to tell you where you should be going if at a young age you're really not even sure of what those things are anyway?
Okay. So how the question is how to tell.
So is your gender identity essentially
Yes.
telling you that something is amiss as opposed to telling you this is what you actually are?
I think it's a mix of both.
Okay.
It's a mix of both, because yes, you're not where you're supposed to be in terms of the body that you're in, but also this is who you are. You are a man, you are a guy, you are a boy. And let me give you a better example. The best way to understand this is to put it in the general public's terms. If a man, for example, like unfortunately it's just you today.
We've given you permission to use CT as the SIU.
So now
you can add some more features. Yes.
So now CT is, let's say he's married, and the wife gets into quarrels with him. We've seen this happening, and the wife chops off his genitals, and she's very upset. So she even throws the genitals to the dogs.
Ouch.
So now we're rushing CT to hospital. We've given him first aid. And now, the first thing is kutengeneza mali for him to be able to, go to the toilet, right? As he is, will he now start saying, I am a woman? Nipatieni rinda, badilisheni jina yangu? He'll not say that. Because as of himself, he knows. Gender identity is the internal sense of self. It's the understanding of who you are. And that is exactly it.
Can gender identity be influenced?
No.
It cannot be influenced.
And I think Adrian started off by saying that gender identity, everyone has a gender identity, right? And if you think about like how can you influence gender identity, again, we've grown up in situations where we have, it's a diverse, family. Like a nuclear family, you have there's the father, there's the mother, you have also, sisters, brothers, all mixed up together. None of them influence each other to, okay, today I want to, be a guy, tomorrow I want to be, a woman. And that sort of like stays consistent in that sense. For transgender people, it's literally the same. Your gender identity, what you were born with, the sense of self, that's what we're calling gender identity. A gender identity is an aspect of the sense of self. It remains constant. It does not change. And otherwise, we normally talk all the time, like who would want to choose a journey of, being trans? Because again, all these other challenges that you have to face are, quite excruciating. For example, some of us don't even have IDs for years. You cannot access M-Pesa, bank accounts, employment is a problem. So compounding all these factors again, you're also struggling with your body, and also the stress that comes with, as we were talking earlier, being considered a deviant in society. Then how are you going to navigate this space and be mentally stable? Again?
How is employment an issue? Where explain to us how employment becomes an issue.
So one is, again, when you transition, if you look at myself and Adrian, we're both trans, right? When I was born, I was assigned male at birth, right? And so when I was 18, the ID that I got, read with the names that I was given by my parents, right? But then transitioning later, and me presenting as I do now, going to a place with that old ID, someone assumes I'm impersonating another person.
So you had an ID previously. So prior to transition, you had an ID, and that ID identified as male
with male names.
With male names.
So going to an M-Pesa shop or just employment with all my school documents, trying to apply, for a position, and the first thing someone would ask, whose documents are this? Where are your documents? So the person they're looking at and the person in the documents, they don't match up.
Yeah.
And so who will even consider giving you employment?
Or who would consider that you're not crazy?
Yeah.
Because that's true. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's sort of like one of the biggest challenges, especially because we talked about, the internal sense of self, where you have to struggle with these feelings of, I'm transgender, what does this mean? There's so many things to think about your health, your future as well. Employment falls into that, and then the issues also of, legal recognition. So when can I walk into a place and, the documents that I have serve me as a person? So employment-wise, that's one big challenge. So you find that most people, even the informal type of employment is very difficult for them to also sustain.
Colbert, what's the legal position for transgender people in Kenya today?
I think, as Eva has explained, bring out those challenges. We have personal challenges there, we have social challenges there, we have medical challenges there, but again, as you have asked, we also have legal challenges. You see, once the person now has transitioned the way Adrian and you have transitioned, we must then accommodate them within our legal spaces, because we have a society that is structured alongside gender lines. We have structures for women, we have structures for men, we have schools for boys, we have schools for girls, we have toilets, all everything's divided alongside gender lines. And we have a person who has transition. And when they transition, the way they have a transition, some of the things are left behind. For example, she has just mentioned academic certificates, she has mentioned IDs, she has mentioned many other identification documents that are left behind. These are legal documents, and so it's only fair that then we also align these documents to match the person that we are looking at. If they are going to exist with us, if they are going to secure jobs, if they are going to live a normal life, then the law must also align. And so in terms of legal spaces, well, of course, the laws apply equally to everybody.
Has the law aligned? The laws in this country, have they aligned?
Not in every aspect. Okay, there are areas, for example, Eva has mentioned ID cards, birth certificates. You see, to get an ID card or a passport, we rely on birth certificates.
Yes.
Our birth certificates rely on birth notifications. Birth notifications rely on reporting by the mother or the midwife or whoever is assisting in the process of birth, and it is basically about looking at what is between your legs and then fixing it there. But as you have been told, as this person grows and comes out, there are changes that happen that are not happening on the birth certificate.
Let me ask something specific.
Yes.
Were you able to ensure that the documentation, school certificates, IDs, qualifications that somebody has, are you able to transition them in this country?
In this country, where we have, it has been in the news, the case of Muga, that was a case about academic certificates. That is a matter that we had to go to court about. And the court said, indeed, academic certificate belongs to this person. It is only this person who can benefit from that academic certificate. The court ordered the National Examination Council to amend the details in the academic certificate, to change the name, and to remove. I don't know whether you noticed that our academic certificate had a gender sex mark on them.
Yes.
But the court was very...
Did the Kenya National Examination Council amend?
They amended.
Okay.
That one I can say they amended. The issue of change of names, the law allows change of names, and we have been we have applied for change of names for trans people, and that happens. So that's one aspect that the administrators or the government has consistently done for trans people. They have allowed change of names, but the outcome is we had to go to court at some point. But as we speak, they are allowed to changing names. But when it comes now to changing that name in the document, for example, the birth certificate, the law does not say you cannot change. But it's the person who is implementing the law who has put the barriers.
Okay.
When it comes to IDs, we have had to go to court. Now, they currently change the names in the IDs, but they don't change the gender mark. So the name reads Eva, but the gender mark remains
male.
Which also means that we are limited with that gender marking. We only have male, female. We don't have any space for transgender.
But they are not saying put T or trans. They are saying, I am F.
You know why I mentioned this?
Yes.
If you are to inculcate the process of acceptance among people, people must first come to accept that transgender people are people like everybody else.
You are right.
If that is not accepted, and we are still stuck with the male and female identity, that problem will persist.
You are right. And also some of the struggles we are going through. So I think for me it's not an issue of whether the law provides or not. It's the issue of implementation. Remember, these laws were passed. We got this. You talked about bringing these laws into this country. Which year was that? These issues were not there. They were not the fore. And so the law cannot remain the way it was 1954, 1955, 1960. The law must then move with the changes in the society. And we are saying the problem is not even with the law. The problem is how we interpret and apply that law.
Adrian, really quickly for you, I mean, because our seconds are winding down, have you found that as you've, moved along in this journey, has society, have people become more accepting of you once they've understood a little bit more about you?
Yes, and in fact, it comes as a surprise to many. You start saying, I'm trans, and they're like, oh, wait. And so you've been with me, you've experienced me, then now we're put in the aspect of I am trans, and you just see, oh yeah, this is actually just a dude like any other, And so the more society understands, the more the ability to, withstand or live alongside transgender people. The minute you stop thinking that these are some, weird creatures somewhere, and you just see it's an actual human being like you and I, then your thinking shifts.
Well, changing narratives happens by having conversations. Thank you very much for being here, all of you, this morning. Colbert Ojiambo is an advocate of the High Court. Adrian Kibe is a program assistant at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and Mrima, the communications lead at Jinsiangu-Kenya. Thank you for being here this morning. Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.